You don't usually think about plastic when you breathe in. You notice plastic when it cracks, breaks, or ends up in the recycling bin. Not when you walk across your bedroom or fold a load of laundry. But several years ago, researchers started studying dust samples from average homes, and what they found is actually still very surprising. The air inside our houses contains a steady stream of microplastics. They're nearly invisible to the eye, yet constantly entering our bodies with every breath. One researcher actually compared our homes to a snow globe of microplastic particles swirling around, always settling, always being stirred back up. Another study estimated that the average adult may inhale tens of thousands of microplastic particles per day, depending on the room they're in and the materials that surround them. And the more we learn about these tiny fragments, the clearer it becomes. The very air that we sleep in, our kids play in, and that we live in every single day has become a primary source of exposure. As a building biology practitioner and a healthy home expert, this really hits close to home. Most people I work with are already juggling concerns about mold or VOCs, humidity, and other chemical exposures. And microplastics add yet another layer, but they also fit into the same pattern. Modern materials break down faster, shed more, and travel easily through the indoor air. The good news is, once you understand these particles, you can quickly remove them from your home and come up with a strategic plan to reduce microplastics over time. The changes that you're about to make are going to be very manageable, and I promise you can keep up with them. And like so many healthy home habits, the biggest wins come from small, consistent steps. Welcome back. I'm Amanda. I'm a building biology practitioner, a certified home inspector, and a healthy home expert. I'm the owner and creator of Healthy House on the Block, where I empower you with knowledge and science to really create a healthier home, one that has fewer toxins, fewer mold spores, fewer microplastics, and create a space that actually supports your health and your wellness. Today, we're going to talk about microplastics, and specifically the microplastics that end up in our air and in the dust around our home. I think this is going to be a really helpful video that you can take some really good ideas from and apply in your own home. Microplastics are typically defined as plastic particles, and these are smaller than 5 millimeters. But the airborne particles that concern these scientists most are actually far smaller. So they're actually under 10 micrometers, and in many cases, small enough to reach deep into our lung tissue. There were actually several studies that were done. They now confirmed that the particles don't just settle into the upper airway, they actually make their way into the lower lungs, and some of the research actually suggests that they may even move into your bloodstream. So there was a 2024 study done, and what it did is they analyzed respiratory deposition, and what they found was the smallest microplastics there behave similarly to other ultrafine pollutants. Now, ultrafine pollutants, they bypass the body's natural filtering defense and embed where gas exchange happens. This is that same delicate area affected by smoke, VOCs, or fine combustion particles. And once they get lodged there, the microplastics, they're almost impossible to remove. Scientists are also examining how chemical additives used in plastics behave once that particle enters the body. So microplastics themselves are not one uniform substance. They contain flame retardants, stabilizers, dyes. They could have plasticizers or even residues from manufacturing on them. So when microplastic particles lodge deep into your respiratory system, some of those chemicals can actually migrate into surrounding tissue. I think it's going to take years before these studies actually catch up to real world exposures. But this early research is very clear that these particles obviously aren't inert, and they're impacting our health and our wellness. One of the more concerning findings is that some studies have actually detected microplastics in placental tissue. So, this raises questions about how early in life exposure even begins. There was a paper that found microplastic fragments in surgical lung samples of adults who had never worked in high exposure occupations. So, what this is telling us is that it isn't just an outdoor pollution issue. It's actually happening inside our homes. And while researchers are very careful not to exaggerate risks, the consensus is growing that inhaling microplastics daily is not something the human body evolved to handle. It's not how we were created. And because indoor air tends to trap pollutants, we know this from many different toxins in our home, the home environment has actually become one of the highest exposure settings. But the good news is we actually have control over this. Most homeowners are actually surprised to learn that microplastics don't always come from obvious plastic items. Indoors, one of your largest sources is actually synthetic textiles. So it could be a polyester throw blanket, nylon carpeting, it could be a microfiber couch, fleece jacket, plush rug, or honestly, even the yoga pants that you just tossed into the laundry basket. And every time these materials move, flex, rub, or wash, they actually shed an incredibly fine fiber. These fibers drift from room to room, they settle on surfaces, and eventually they become a part of your household dust. And then when someone walks across your floor, or they perhaps open a door, they fluff a pillow, turn on a vent, those particles go right back into the air. So, yes, household plastics contribute too, but these synthetic textiles are a major source of this airborne microplastic exposure that we're talking about. So, of course, we also could talk about storage bins, decor, toys, packaging, everyday items like maybe a synthetic cutting board or worn containers. These all contain plastics too. And then over time, the plastics will actually oxidize, they'll break down, and they will send microscopic fragments back into the environment. Are you a little unsure about where you even should be starting with the healthy house? Like, what are the first steps? After 10 plus years of hands-on experience, I know what those first steps are, and I know the steps to take that won't have you spending lots of money in the beginning, but will get you excited for all of the changes and all the potential that your house has. The truth is, creating a healthy house doesn't have to be really expensive. It doesn't have to be really complicated. You just have to know the exact steps to take. Anybody can check things off a list, and that's exactly what I'm here to help you do. My free ebook is an amazing resource to help you get started on getting toxins out of your house and creating healthier habits, and also planning for the future for some of those bigger changes. There's also outdoor sources that play a very unexpected role. So, vehicle tires actually create microplastic loaded dust on the roads. Now, these particles easily hitch a ride indoors on our shoes, on our clothing, our pets probably bring them in, even through just having our windows open. So, there was a study that analyzed personal exposure, and it found that microplastic concentrations inside cars can actually exceed those in living rooms or bedrooms. So this means even a short commute can add so much to your daily toxic load. And what makes this especially tricky is that microplastics behave a lot like dust. They settle, they resuspend, they accumulate in areas where airflow is kind of stagnant. And so, homes with heavy carpeting, synthetic furnishings, and limited ventilation tend to show much higher concentrations of this toxin. And because many modern homes are sealed tightly for energy efficiency, once these particles are inside, they have very few pathways out. While microplastics can appear anywhere, there are some spaces that become a concentrated hotspot, if you will, just because of how this space is used by the rest of the household. And first on the list is living rooms, especially those with synthetic furniture. They tend to accumulate fibers, and this is often released from upholstery and rugs. So if a family spends a lot of time, say, on the couch, especially jumping, snuggling in with blankets, or just kind of moving around on that space, the fiber shedding increases, also increasing your risk. Bedrooms are another high exposure area. Think about pillowcases or comforters, even pajamas, carpet, and anything in your closet. All these continue to contribute to airborne particles in the dust. So, because we spend about a third of our lives sleeping or in our bedroom, these airborne microplastics in the bedroom matter far more than people even realize. There's also the laundry room. This is where so many fibers are released during both washing and drying. So, washing synthetics can cause microfiber shedding into wastewater, and dryers, especially unvented or even poorly vented models, can distribute those fine fibers into the room and then throughout the rest of the home. Now, your entryway in your mudroom is kind of the gate for your home. That's what I like to think of it as. So it can actually have a lot of those outdoor toxins that we talked about, and it's a spot where it collects the outside to inside transfer, especially from what we talked about, road dust and those tire particles. So without proper containment, those particles can travel quickly into the rest of the house. And then, of course, dust-prone corners. So think behind furniture or under beds, around vents, even in spaces that have poor airflow. These act like microplastic, almost like storage zones. It accumulates. Every disturbance from a vacuum without a HEPA filter to kids running across the room can actually send these particles kind of right back into the air that we're breathing. One of the biggest wins is simply reducing synthetic fabrics wherever you can. You don't have to overhaul your entire home. You just have to focus on the items that are used most frequently. So, replacing a polyester throw blanket with cotton or choosing linen bedding instead of microfiber will reduce daily shedding significantly. Cleaning habits also make a huge difference. You have to use a vacuum with a true HEPA filter. This will capture microplastics that maybe a regular vacuum would blow back out into the room. And then if you pair that with damp dusting rather than dry, you will immediately reduce the amount of fiber-filled dust floating around. You can also improve your airflow. So even a few minutes of fresh air exchange when weather allows, this can help dilute indoor particle concentrations. Homes with mechanical ventilation already have a head start, but even older homes can benefit from strategic window opening as well. And then let's look at the laundry room. This is a great place to make very simple changes, and your laundry care matters more than most people will think. So, washing synthetics in cold water and on gentle cycles will actually reduce the amount of shedding. And adding a simple microfiber filter to your washing machine can actually help capture a significant portion of the fibers before they enter the drain or potentially re-enter your indoor air. Now, if you're going to hang laundry to dry, even occasionally, this can actually help cut down on airborne fibers that would be produced by high heat drying. The only thing to be cautious of is to make sure that you are not increasing your humidity levels too much. And then finally, reduce deteriorating plastics like old storage containers or cracked bins. This helps eliminate a surprisingly common source of microplastic fragments, and replacing items over time with glass, stainless steel, or wood creates a slow but steady shift toward a healthier indoor environment. So over the long run, you can really do things to impact the health and wellness of your home. First and foremost, selecting natural fiber furnishings is going to make the biggest difference. So you want to pay attention, look for cotton, wool, linen, hemp, jute, or even other plant-based materials that won't shed microplastics. Often these will actually come with the added benefit of fewer chemical additives as well. So when families choose a new rug or a sofa or a set of curtains and they're opting for natural materials, it can actually dramatically reduce the particle load. You can also invest in a HEPA air purifier. This provides kind of that extra layer of protection. So because microplastics behave like dust, HEPA filtration will effectively capture them, especially in bedrooms, especially in living areas where that air can become kind of stagnant. So for families dealing with respiratory sensitivities or just chemical sensitivities in general, this can actually be a game changer. You can also adopt a shoe-free policy in your home. Shoe-free homes tend to have noticeably lower levels of microplastics from that tire wear we talked about and outdoor dust. So pairing that with durable entry mats and consistent vacuuming of these high traffic zones will actually keep the transfer of outdoor plastics to an absolute minimum. Another thing you can do is integrate microplastic reduction into like the broader healthy home routine. So reducing VOCs, managing dust, improving ventilation, and choosing healthier materials, this creates a home environment that supports long-term wellness on multiple fronts. Microplastics, they're not isolated pollutants. They actually interact with other chemicals and dust components that are already inside the home. And by addressing them, you actually strengthen the quality of your entire indoor ecosystem. So if you're already working toward a low toxin home, this is actually just a natural extension of the work that you're already doing. Microplastics follow the same pathways as dust, as chemical pollutants, and even mold fragments. So they accumulate in the same corners. They travel through the same vents, and they affect the same respiratory vulnerabilities in our bodies. So the strategies that reduce microplastics, choosing natural materials, cleaning intentionally, prioritizing ventilation, will also reduce VOCs, allergens, and other contaminants. Microplastics are simply one more part of that same story. Modern materials have changed faster than our indoor environments can adapt, and families are the ones living with these consequences. But the encouraging part is this: every small change matters. And so when you make a couple adjustments, they often make a really big difference that you can actually feel. Your air is going to be cleaner. You're going to have less dust, fewer irritants. And over time, these choices build a home that actively supports health rather than challenging it. As always, thank you so much for being here. I hope that you can take at least one or even a few of these ideas, apply it in your own space, and start to see the difference in your home as it becomes healthier. If you found this video helpful, definitely give it a like, and be sure to subscribe to my channel because I'm here every single week with new tips and new ideas on how to create a space that actually supports your health and wellness rather than slowly burdening it down.